If you love movies and movie discussions, you've come to the right place. Who am I, you ask? I am the Wiz. I'm here today with...
Zero.
How you doing this week?
I think I'm finally getting over that cruddy sinus infection,
Nice.
finally.
Nice. They're a bitch, man, after a while. It took me a good 3 or 4 weeks to get over mine, so I feel you there. But you sound good. Well, you didn't sound bad either when you had the sickness, so, you know, you're one of those lucky few where I'm like, it doesn't sound too bad. We're here to review the 1975 thriller 3 Days of the Condor, starring Robert Redford, Faye Dunaway, and Max von Sydow, directed by Sidney Pollack. I did not know much about this film. I knew it was a political thriller. I think you were about the same where I am, so we're kind of coming at this fresh. So begin with your thoughts on 3 Days of the Condor.
This one was really, really interesting with all the political intrigue, the backstabbing, and just things just going completely awry. You're just kind of almost second-guessing yourself of like when things are going to go completely wrong. Especially because Turner, even though he's kind of a bookish sort of nerd and everything, he's read enough that he knows like sort of the basics of espionage, but he's no field agent. Mm-hmm. And he makes that so clear in multiple parts of the movie.
I agree with you. That is kind of an interesting premise, that the political intrigue on top of the main character not being a spy and not really equipped to deal with all this. I think the film is a pretty entertaining thriller, but the minute you really start thinking deeply about certain aspects of the film, I think it starts to fall apart, which is why I would say, for the most part, enjoy the film, don't think too deeply about it. Because there are a lot of things I had a problem with as soon as I started really honing in on certain things. And a lot of it actually has to do with the fact that as a CIA book reader, is basically what his role was. Yeah, he had some military experience and stuff like that, but I think he was a little too adept at this, especially when it comes into Max von Sydow's character in the film, who was the assassin. It felt a little contrived that he was able to evade him in his way. That they try to explain it as to people with von Sydow's character's predilections are much more regimented, and you can figure out what their pattern is. But with him, he's so sporadic because he doesn't know what to do. It's actually harder. And I kind of don't buy that, really. Just the way that the character is, especially at the end with Max von Sydow. Did you really believe that von Sydow's character had a hard time pinning him down?
It's kind of hard to say because, I mean, I get the trope. The trope is just a corner dog is going to be a much more desperate one, and they're going to do things that are very unconventional. So, I mean, I get that angle, but at the same time, there were some moments that it was just kind of like, that sort of reasoning was sort of used as a deus ex machina, and it was just like, oh, they just wrote that out. Okay, whatever, just fine.
Right. But that's also why I say don't think too deeply about it, because once you do, then those things start to fall apart. But I have to admit, for the most part, I was entertained by the film. I thought, not that it was interesting, but it was just an entertaining, kind of fun film that I could just be like, oh yeah, this is kind of fun. I think also what's interesting about the film is the style of music that's in this movie. Now, I know it's from the 70s, but this is strangely funky for a political intrigue thriller. Like, I was waiting for Shaft to pop out somewhere at some point. That's why I was like, I'm not like dogging on the music. I think the music's actually good, but it just doesn't fit well with the rest of the film. What about you?
Yeah, music direction was oddly very interesting and in some ways a bit upbeat. Usually with a spy flick, I'm usually expecting the music to be like dark and real brooding and stuff like that. I was like, wow, this is a really interesting choice for the music, and it's not bad at all.
You would expect, like in like those type of thrillers, it to be a little more industrial, a little bit more. It's dark, as like you said in your response, but it's like, like, what the fuck am I watching? I was like, what is this? But it's not bad. I enjoyed it, but I was just sitting there going, I'm enjoying this music a little too much for a spy thriller. That's a little weird. I will say that the one character in this film that I actually liked, and the one actor as well, was Max von Sydow, who played the assassin in the film. I think he was good as the assassin. I thought he was an interesting character. I wish I would have known more about that character so it could make it like more of a cat and mouse dynamic. But I think if they did, you would have to really stretch the credulity a little bit more as to why he can't get a pin on Condor.
Von Sydow seems to be the one that just really took the role as serious as you could get.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, with Robert Redford playing Turner, he doesn't really play off the nerd role that well, because he actually looks like a halfway decent looking person. Is just like, yeah, this isn't a bookish nerd, this is an action hero.
Yeah, I know. Us nerds, we are hideous looking, and it's just unbelievable when you have somebody as handsome as Robert Redford with his hair and his sideburns and stuff like that. Like, no, that's not what a nerd looks like. I agree with you. But I also think Robert Redford wasn't bad in the role. I'm just not a big fan of Redford. I get why he is charming to some, but he's not someone where I'm like, ooh, Robert Redford's in this? Like, that I have never gotten from him. I know some do, but I know I haven't. I think there's one thing that we're not discussing here that I'm going to rip the Band-Aid off right now because I hated this element of the film. And that's anything to do with Faye Dunaway's character. Now, I will say that Faye Dunaway did a good job in this role. However, the way that this character is written and the plot that she is given in the movie is so bad, it's distracting. What did you think of that character and what was going on with that character in the story?
Oh, God. That character gave me a bit of whiplash because, like, in the beginning, it's just like she absolutely detests Turner, thinks he's absolutely psychotic, and then all of a sudden they grow to liking each other, and boom, just romantic sex scene. I'm just like, God, this character development is just way too rapid. Jesus.
Yeah, like the soft lighting too in that lovemaking scene was like, what is this? Like, it literally went from kidnapping her to then tying her to the bathroom, and then maybe a few minutes later, they're having sex. It's made to look romantic, which is the other thing was like, wait a minute. It's like, either this is the quickest form of Stockholm Syndrome I've ever seen in the film, or something isn't right. And then on top of that, after that, she helps him. I'm like, what is this? Like, the character and the plotline involving her is so bad. But again, I have to reiterate, if you don't think about it so hard, I think it's still pretty enjoyable. But that entire sequence, the entire subplot of him kidnapping that character, and then for some reason, she's like, I believe you, and I'm romantically interested in you, let's have sex. Like, what? Where did this come from? I know a lot of people will probably say, like, it must be like a survival instinct. Did you get that from the character at all?
Not really.
No.
It just felt really whiplashy. Just like, oh my God, you're so wretched. You're a horrible person. And then suddenly, I think you're kind of a nice guy. And then suddenly, just all of a sudden, you've got them both in bed with each other. It's like, this just feels like there's just so much whiplash. Just trying to make this whole, like, love plot work.
The justification I think they had was when the boyfriend called her asking her where was she, and he forced her to be like, hey, act like everything's okay. I think they made the justification as how that guy reacted to her not being there as the, oh, he's really not that good for me. Make love to me, kidnapper guy. Like, what? All right, Zero, so that is the end of the review. Do you recommend 3 Days of the Condor?
I will, but with a very, very steep caveat of you're going to need to turn your brain off. Otherwise, you're just going to kind of pick at the weak points of the film, and you're just going to be like, a lot of this just doesn't make sense.
I 100% agree with you. I am also going to recommend it with the same steep caveat that if you just want to have an entertaining political thriller that is just interesting enough to keep your attention, I think 3 Days of the Condor is pretty good, but those caveats are pretty big. Like, we already mentioned the whole love subplot that is just horrendous in this movie. But honestly, I think the cat and mouse between the CIA and Turner in this film is entertaining enough to keep this interesting, especially with Max von Sydow as the assassin in the movie. I find it entertaining enough, but I think it's a mess in other aspects.
I think I'm kind of with you that just the cat and mouse stuff is fairly entertaining, especially just when Turner finally sort of grapples with, like, the best way to deal with the internal corruption inside. The ending I thought was kind of interesting considering the time period as well too, because I think this was during the 70s oil crisis, and the ending where just they sort of go into the whole, like, political thing of, you know, the CIA is going to do dirty shit all the time because you're going to tell Americans that, you know, they're going to have to go without keeping their houses warm because we can't get any oil. Nope, CIA is going to do some dirty shit to get that oil. I was just like, if this released right around the time of the 70s oil and fuel crisis, this would have been way on the nose.
I think if you take away Faye Dunaway's character entirely, I think you would have a better movie. So, Zero, do you recommend 3 Days of the Condor?
Yeah, I will, but just make sure to turn your brain off. Otherwise, you're just going to be picking apart some of the weaker points of the film.
And I feel the same way. I will also recommend 3 Days of the Condor. Check that out on Paramount Plus, but you also have to have the Showtime add-on for that as well. So if you have that, check it out over there. Now, if you want my full review on this movie, you can go to my website at IamTheWiz.com. You'll have my full written review right on the site, along with a link to the video that has this review that you've just listened to. Thank you for listening to this review. If you want to know what we're reviewing in the next couple days, you can look on the screen right now to see what's coming up next. If you liked what you heard, go ahead and leave a like on this video. If you want to discuss your opinion on the film or the review itself, please leave a comment. And if you want to hear more, subscribe to the channel. Thank you again for listening. I will talk to you next time.